Hi Sagar, how are you doing?
Hey Prashant, I'm good. Grounded,
And
over here, but then quite happy. Tell me about.
yes, an unfortunate situation. By now you should be already packing your bags for ISB, but probably some delay.
Yeah, but
But congrats for the
better
call.
late than
Of course,
never.
a bit late, but it will certainly happen.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. So let us begin by discussing your profile. You had a very unique profile, mostly towards marketing with a top media brand, and 6+ years of experience, which is also slightly higher. So you had an interesting profile when you applied to ISB. So why don't you tell us more about your academic and professional profile?
Yeah, you rightly pointed out. I have almost close to 7 years of experience by now. I
Right.
did my BMS from Mumbai University before doing my MBA in Communication Management from Symbiosis. And since then, I started my career as a planner in digital advertising. Uh, about 2 years, since then I moved into Z Entertainment as a brand manager, and recently I've grown into a role of more to do with strategy and partnerships. Over a period of 6 years, it has been a good growth and transition from where I began in the agency days till now. A few highlights of my career would be the film marketing campaigns which I worked on, like films like Madras Cafe and Dharam Sankat Mein. I'll also launch the largest theater initiative in the country called Z Theater.
Right.
One unique, initiative, which was a peace initiative between India and Pakistan, I was a part of. And of late, I have been involved in launching, 2, 3 channels with Z in partnership with all the large DTH and telco companies in the country. So that's how the length of my experience has been.
Right, and certainly a very interesting profile, especially with the quality of work that you brought in. But
Hmm.
but you applied to ISB as a reapplicant. So with
Hmm.
almost the same profile and GMAT a year back, how did your application change? How did you change your application strategy? What kind of things did you focus on?
So it wasn't a completely same profile that I reapplied with, because I remember when I was reapplying, I had got in touch with you, and the first thing that you had told me is, um, whatever is not in your hand, like your 10 standard score or your 12 standard score or your past experience, you can change that. But in the next 1 year which you have, you can put in all the effort to improve on those aspects, like improve your GMAT, improve on the quality of your work experience, see if you can work harder and get a appraisal, get a promotion. So even though the team I worked in was the same, more or less, a lot of the responsibilities were the same. But these, small nuances added, to the improvement which I put together with your guidance. So I improved, on my GMAT score. I put in more effort, and got a. I moved from just a marketing profile to additional strategy uh, and overall managerial responsibilities. That was a big thing. And over and above that, I think that um, to not lose clarity on what I wanted to do, and why I wanted to go to ISB was something which was still there. So that overall, came together in the essays which you helped me work on.
Interesting. So yes, coming to your engagement with ISBmantra, so you did work with us on your application. I remember a lot of conversation that we had around improving your profile, and of course the kind of effort you actually put in to do that. But during the process of building your application, tell us more what kind of inputs you received from the team, what you think were the most helpful to you, and how did your approach and perspective get enhanced based on these interactions?
See, I think when anyone starts, the whole application, with my example in my mind, there's a lot of chaos which happens in your mind. You don't know, how to approach it. You think, you want to put yourself in a particular way in front of, uh, the school. Um, you think these are your strengths, these are your weaknesses. So there's a lot of turmoil which is going on. So from the very beginning, when a trained professional is able to give you clarity on exactly the kind of front you should put forward, it's a great help. So after the initial sessions of goal setting, and to frame the overall strategy of the application and the interviews, um, you're able to put together all those small bits of your work ex, of your of the kind of schooling you did, to the kind of different projects, your role, your GMAT, all of this together into a nice unique story. Because to put all those individual aspects into a unique story is very important, which is where the guidance of ISB mantra comes into play. And not just there, from that stage to then finally be able to put together that unique story eloquently in front of the panel, through the essays and through the interview, is also important. Because the clarity needs to be communicated really well, which is also a big part of getting to ISB. So that's also where you guys really played a big role in gaining confidence, and in being able to articulate all those thoughts really well, and all those strengths really aptly in front of the panel and in the essays.
Awesome. Glad that you benefited from these interactions. And one thing that was also a bit unique about your profile was, like you mentioned, you had an MBA already. And
Mhm.
candidates who have an MBA while applying for their second MBA, they are often concerned about how the target school, the school that you are applying to, will perceive the need for a second MBA, whether they will consider it a negative or positive. So, how was your experience applying for a second MBA in terms of the application and the interview?
So there are two aspects to this, which I remember you also telling me, and later on I also realized through the interview. Is one is that ISB has always been a pro candidate school, so they are going to try their best to actually get you on board. um, Second is that you need to be able to justify why you did your initial MBA, and why you want to do a second MBA, the gap that is still there. If you're able to justify that in front of the panel and through the essays, they are more than keen to listen to you. So I remember this is something you always told me, and which is why when I did my last MBA, it was a need of the hour. It was a great stepping stone for me to get into advertising, to get into media. And only when I got into media is I realized that my ambitions have now blossomed into get into a bigger role of strategy and planning, which is where then a core MBA from ISB came into play. So if one can put together why you want to do a MBA from ISB, but at the same time the input that your initial MBA and the addition, the value add that had, if you can weave all of that into your story, then there's no one to stop you.
Right. I think one thing you very aptly said is that ISB is very pro candidate. So they are not looking for reasons to reject you. They're looking for what you bring to the table. And even if you had an MBA already, which applies to not just ISB, but most international schools that one applies to, you have to kind of just establish, like you did, that first MBA helped you uh, get into media and get the right roles that you were looking for, and now your aspirations have evolved, which another MBA like that of ISB can further help you fulfill.
Right.
And of course, your interview, I mean, this was your second interview experience with ISB. So how was your overall interviewing experience with ISB? What do you think they were looking to test? What were the key areas of discussion? and probably how was it driven with respect to your application?
So the first thing, that I want to say is, that the interview is almost like counterintuitive, because how much ever you plan for the interview, and we all, try to begin in our minds that this is how it's going to, kickstart. It's never that
Right.
way. So the first, learning I had is that, you should go with a clean mind. Just go with the idea that you're going there to have a very clear dialogue, with a bunch of people. So that was, always the first thing I went with. Second, the interview, was it was, more of a conversation that we had, instead, of a typical interview that we think, interview is. So and which, covered all those typical key highlights that we, I with ISBmantra, was working it with. So from, why you want to do MBA, why ISB, about my role, and they would go deeper into, certain projects that I took on. So that was a typical, flavor of it. They began, by asking me about what I do, in my job, everyday job. And then once I told them, about my role, they went deeper into a few nuances about my KRAs, and, how about some problems which I'd solved, about some deals which I had cracked. So they
Right.
are, I think, they are just trying to know if you are the same person you're trying to project through your essays. So they are just trying to verify that. Post that, they asked me about, which has been my favorite project campaign, got to know me better, through that. And then, the mainstream questions like why MBA and why ISB. In the why MBA and why ISB bit, I realized that they were trying to, play that they were not convinced, with why I want to go to ISB. They were trying to show that I don't need ISB. I'm more than, happy in the career which I've chosen and I'm doing. And probably, I'm just going to ISB for the namesake, or just to get a brand, on my CV. So it's very important, to not lose, track, and to actually stick to, what you believe in over here. Because it's easy, to get carried away with the questions they are, trying to ask you, because they are trying to realize, how superficial you are in your decision over here, or is it something you've really made up your mind, that ISB fits into your short-term and long-term career goals, and which is why going to ISB. So they're trying to know that, through the questions, they are asking you. That's, the overall thing that they did. And a few examples. What I also remember is they kept on, cornering me that even if you, go to ISB, maybe you can, do the PGP Max, the PGP Pro, and, so many other courses are there. Why
Right.
you want to do, ISB PGP. So one needs to be able to justify that, not, in a textbookish way, but, in your own, way that you think is relevant for you. So I remember telling them that because they told me that, most of the faculty teaching PGP Pro is going to be same as, your course. So everything is going to be same. You'll save also on a lot of money. Then why don't you do that? So probably, the education is same, but then the whole learning you have through peers, by spending time with them, over a period of 1 year, you won't get that, through a PGP Max or a PGP Pro, because that, happens on weekends. So I told them, about how before the interview I met, a bunch of people waiting in the lobby, and one, chap was from real estate, the other was from food tech. And the conversation, that you have with them, that, is what ISB is, and that can be achieved, only through the residential program, which is the PGP. So, these are a few examples which you can pull in to make the conversation much more personal and much more candid, what I feel. One more last, take, which I just remember is, while you're talking about your experiences, and you're trying to justify, why ISB, instead of just focusing on let's say of that I'll be learning microeconomics, or I'll be learning these particular fundamentals. It's better to tie those back to your job or your experience, is when you're actually making a just argument about it. I remember they asked me why ISB and why the specific curriculum of ISB, and I told them a case wherein I was negotiating the price point for a new channel with Airtel, and we were not coming to terms with the pricing of it, which is when I told them about how different microeconomic decisions can actually aid in deciding what the price is. And this kind of learning is what you will get through some of the subjects at ISB. So then the question he asked me, but they are not going to teach you exactly this what you just said at ISB. But yeah, they won't teach you exactly that. But what they're going to teach you through different case studies, you can always tie it to your experience, is what I told them. So I think such conversations make them realize that you're actually honest candidate, and not going to ISB just to get a brand tag. Finally, one more thing is, you have to be true to yourself. There's no way you can actually lie through this whole thing. So either you are true to yourself, or you practice being true to yourself by going with someone like ISB Mantra. Because I remember in the heat of all of this, one of the panelists said, I'm so sure you're going to ISB, just to get the brand ISB, on your CV. That's probably the only reason you're, going to ISB for. And the impromptu, reaction to this is to go defensive. No, it's not for the brand name, it's for this, because that's what they're trying to, gauge. But my impromptu reaction was that, of course, yes, brand name is one of the things, that I would go to ISB for. Along with the other, things which I've just mentioned, the brand also matters. If I'm going to introduce myself as someone from Symbiosis versus someone from ISB, there is a difference in that, right? So that is something which I surely want, and I respect that, the brand name. So
Right.
that was my overall experience with the
No,
interview.
thank you. That was very detailed and some very good insights. Certainly, you did well because there were some difficult questions that you handled well. Probably naturally coming to you when you work with media, but the idea is there are some key things that you touched upon. One, the fact that you have to be able to associate with what you have written in your application and be able to go deeper into what you have done, because if you just write something and you've not done it, you will not be able to associate with it when the conversation goes deeper. But the more interesting part is when you have established that you're really doing awesome in your life, and still you need an MBA. So I think that's what happened with you. The interviewers try to, when you say corner you, they try to really test if your need for an MBA is genuine or driven by the fact that, oh, I need some brand shopping and let me add something on my CV, which you may or may not need. So there again, you certainly did well because you were able to relate to specific projects where you could have done better with an MBA, or you were able to bring in specific aspects of the conversations that you had with the applicants themselves, which reflect the kind of learning you will have. So I think, yes, in addition to preparing well, you did well. You were street smart to be able to answer questions because you can never anticipate the exact questions that will be asked, right? So great, that was awesome. And beyond that, or during your prep, you did go through several sessions with ISB Mantra. You had mock interviews and counseling sessions with different experts at ISB Mantra. So please tell us more about how these sessions helped you streamline your thoughts. How did you see your approach changing or evolving? What did you have on mind before you started the preparation, and how was your thought process after that?
And the first point, I recollect once, you mentioned all of these things is, um, as you said, you're never, one is never able to anticipate, how the interview is going to go, but the only thing which can prepare you, for it is a lot of practice, which I think the series of different, mock interviews and the strategy sessions which one goes through with ISB Mantra creates that lot of, practice and that confidence in you. You might not always have the same set of questions in an interview, of course not, but at least you're tuned to tackle, different kind of, questions through all that practice. So that is, the first key takeaway. Second thing that I recollect is when I began, my writing, my essays, and I remember, we had a great strategy session and a goal setting session where you helped me really refine, what my goals are and, how ISB should really fit into this, the whole, story. And basis that, I remember writing, the entire essay, the 2 essays which are there, even though you had told me just to, put together the points. And once I had shared the essays with you, you had rejected, the essays completely. I think I had done 2 iterations of the essays and you had rejected it. So, and I remember you telling me one thing, that don't tell a story that you want to tell a story that ISB wants to hear or the panel wants to hear. So it is easy, to get swayed away by a lot of emotions when you're writing about yourself, because you always want to, project yourself in one particular way, right? And you think these are the skill sets which people would appreciate. But, those kind of qualitative skill sets could be, one of the things. But at the end of the day, ISB is looking to also place you as a prospective candidate, right? So where you really help me is to highlight, all those placeable skill sets along with, my unique qualities together into, this package, which had, a separate story from all the other incoming candidates. So that is something, which we are unable to do, as people who are writing about oneself, but only someone who's a trained professional can actually help you from an outsider point of view. So this is something I remember, clearly as a huge, takeaway from the exercises. One more thing is, by actually talking to different, people from ISB Mantra, you're able to, actually anticipate different mindsets, and different questions that the panelists can throw at you, right? You might have, a panelist, who's probably just, trying to know you as an individual. The other panelist is, trying to probably test you by putting you in a pressure situation. So you should be able to, to handle and tackle all of that, which by talking to different, kinds of people at ISB Mantra, you actually go through that. And by the end of it, I think I remember I did some 4 to 5, different interview sessions and different, essay writing sessions. And by the end of it, not only are you confident, but you're able to actually articulate your thoughts in a much more refined, and clear manner. Because what I have known and gathered from a lot of people at ISB, the alums, that they pay a lot of, value to how you communicate and your communication skills. Because you might be a great, leader, but and on paper you might be a great candidate, but if you're unable to communicate those skills well in front of the panel, that's going to be, a big failure, right? So that's where again, the practice, and by refining the thoughts, by talking to, different people, by going through the strategy sessions and the goal setting sessions, by the end of it, you're not just having a conversation, but you're actually having a dialogue, with the panelists, which is something they all, are expecting.
Right. Yeah, this is really insightful in terms of the overall approach. And I remember rejecting the entire essay draft that you came up with. Though the idea is first to put together what you may be planning to write, so that one is aligned with what is your core communication to the school. But as you said, it's not always about what you want to say. Though it is not completely about what the school wants to hear, more around what are the strengths that are relevant to the school. What are this, because there is a context to it. So what is it that is relevant to the communication? What was relevant to the process? and sometimes we get overtly emotional about a few things that we feel, whether it be about a specific project that we may be involved in, or about a specific career plan that we may have on mind. So to be more objective about what is going to be relevant to your audience is something that is applicable everywhere, including the application. So that is something that you were very receptive to. I appreciate that. And the fact that you are willing to work that much hard, both during your application as well as interview prep, because the sessions that you had with us, I'm sure there's a lot of homework you did behind the scenes. You were able to put together a lot of material to prepare for the different range of questions, but it's awesome, and it's really a happy time to realize that it has worked, and glad that both of us were able to put in that effort towards it, because our effort is immaterial if you are not serious or you are not committed to what you're doing. So glad that it worked, and congrats again for the same.
Thank you. Just to add to that, Prashant, one thing I forgot
Yes.
is the very fact that you get an interview call when you're shortlisted. You get an interview call almost 5 days before the actual due date, right?
Right.
So there's
Right.
barely any time to actually prepare from scratch. But the very fact that when you work with ISB Mantra also on the essays, you're able to modulate most of the kind of questions that you can expect even before you get the interview call, because you're already going through those many sessions while putting together your essays. B, even though there is a short span of 5 days before the interview, I remember how receptive and how helpful everyone from your team were in that short span. So that again is really helpful when you're so anxious. You're happy about the fact that you got an interview call, but you're anxious. Then you have a bunch of people to calm your nerves over a period of 2-3 days and to prepare you for the battlefield. Is a great effort which is there, other than of course the actual matter of the interview conversations we have.
Yeah, glad to know that, because of course, like you said, 5 to 7 days is what ISB gives you to prepare. And what's important, and what's something that a lot of candidates overlook, is the fact that interview prep is not the prep that you do just in those 5 to 7 days, but then the amount of brainstorming and the amount of preparation that goes into the entire process while building your application prepares you for the interview to a good extent, which goes on to help when you actually get the interview invite. So, like you said, you must have felt that, yeah, there's a lot of preparation that has already happened while you were developing your application, which was further being built upon during the actual interview prep.
Yeah.
Awesome. And now that you have the admit and of course the joining that was likely to happen now. So though it is delayed, but then you mentioned that you quit your job a few months back. So how have you been using your time? How is it engaging with other admits and alumni? Probably there are some pre-courses that you are engaged in. So how is it going since your last admit? Sorry, since your admit in the period that you have been waiting.
I think the best thing about ISB till now is I've realized that they're so accessible in terms of all the alums, the current batch, and the cohort groups that they create. So I remember I think I'm a part of all the cohort groups since December, and all the groups have been engaging and meeting in different cities all across the country since December. So we end up having a lot of quality conversations when we meet, and we build a lot of strong relationships and bonds. Since then, we've all been busy working on the pre-term courses which ISB has sent us. So that's also a big part of getting into ISB, that they want to ensure that you're well prepared and in sync and in line with all the rest of the batch, irrespective of whatever your background is. You need to have the basics right. So they've given a bunch of pre-term exercises and courses to us, which all of us are busy with. Over and above that, we all have formed different interest groups on WhatsApp and on Telegram, from consulting to finance, marketing, product management. And the best thing is that everyone is so enthusiastic to participate and form different activities that we often have. So we've actually begun solving different cases already. We've started discussing different chapters about product management and consulting already. And of course, beyond this, the sheer banter, and the fun that people do, there are a lot of gigs, that we play, on Zoom. People, play guitar and different instruments. People are singing, sharing jokes. There's going to be a stand-up gig, soon. So, we already, even though the school officially hasn't begun, you already feel you're a part of, the ISB family as such.
The learning has begun already.
The learning has completely begun. Not only from the material which they've shared, but also the peer learning that you're gaining. You won't believe this. A few days back, one of my friends is actually planning to start a online module on changing the education system in the country, and he comes from a core engineering background, but he's really passionate about this. And we had a nice 2-hour jam in the night where we spoke about how we can market this proposition, and because it's actually the need of the hour with such a transition happening in the learning that we are getting because of corona now affecting us. Everybody is going to have digital education. So, and how the education that we get when we grow is not broken, but almost redundant. So we are already starting to actually share a lot of ideas, and that's fundamental. What ISB gives you, right? Beyond just the education, it's the kind of learning you get from each other.
Right. So certainly it's fun, and it is keeping you busy in terms of learning and engaging with alumni, which is or current students, which is great, because it's a short program, 1-year program. So looks like through these groups, through the effort that you're putting in, there is a lot of planning and preparation for eventual placements that have already begun.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And of course, it's very good to know that you're enjoying your time even before you have joined the program. Thank you so much for the insights that you've given on your preparation and your planning and approach to the application. Before we wrap up, what would be your advice to prospective applicants, especially those who come from a diverse background? I remember in your case, we had limited recruiters to look at. When we looked at the pool of recruiters, we'll be targeting post ISB. So people coming from diverse background have their own challenges, though their own advantages. So what is your advice to applicants in general, and especially those who come from a diverse background and industries?
I think the very first, advice is to be true to yourself. You have to be really clear, as to what you want to do in the long run, in the short run, and how the PGP from ISB is going to fit into this particular scheme of things. Once you get that, really sorted in your mind, it's only about convincing, a bunch of panelists in front of you, your story. But before that, you have to be convinced, with what you want to do, irrespective of whatever background you come from. Second, because you come from a niche or a diverse background or niche industry. The good thing is that what people say, it's much more slightly easier than one coming from a typical IT engineering background. The second, but the thing is, you really need to be able to justify yourself, on paper and in the interviews. Why is it that you want to do a formal B-school, MBA? Talking about placements, if you realize that for me, I come from media and entertainment, and almost last I checked, 2% of the placements, from ISB happen in media and entertainment, which is approximately 18, of 18, people getting placed, which is
Right.
itself, a big number. So basically, a person like me, and that 2% is actually the lowest, for any industry in the different, industries that come for the placement. So you're getting anywhere from, 15 to 20 different chances to get yourself placed. I don't think anything, can be better than that for all the people who are coming from, a niche industry.
Right.
Having said that, that's actually the flavor, of ISB, right? You're, coming from a niche industry or, a diverse background, and you come across so many other such people with, their own diverse set of experiences, and that learning which you are going to, have, not only impart, but, the learning you get is going to go a long way, post, your ISB degree. Overall, I just want to sum it up by saying that don't look at, ISB as a destination in your career. It should be looked at, one of the means to eventually go to, your destination, whatever your career goal is. A lot of people make the mistake of looking at ISB as, my goal, and that's, where then you're not able to justify, your essays. You're not able to have a clear conversation in the interview. So you're able to, only when you're able to look at ISB as a means to reach your goals, that's, where it helps. So that's one big takeaway which I realized through my whole process.
Right. And I think because you do realize that media and entertainment is not the biggest sector recruiting from ISB, but the fact that there are good options, and the fact that you come with a relevant background. So if there are 20 companies coming with such a role, you will be the first one to be picked because you have the most relevant background for such a role. So I
Absolutely.
think
Yeah.
that realization is important, not looking at the absolute numbers, but the fact that diversity means that you will be among the first few candidates chosen for that role if you come with the right background.
Yeah. Yeah. And just
Awesome.
one more point, Prashant, just one more point
Yes.
is, I think we all, fail. We do the mistake, that we look at the immediate, gains after getting, out of ISB. A lot of people do that mistake. I think, the enriching, course like ISB actually is not about just the immediate short-term goals, but what ISB is going to, help you gain in the longer run. So people should, all the students should look at this course, what and how it can help you in the long run to build your personality, the kind of network you make, the kind of learning you're going to get, and that long run, jump which you will, get in terms of your career is something which needs to be the focus. Which really helps in setting, the expectations also right, and getting, the right jobs, and being, happy in your career.
Right. Great. These are some very interesting insights, and really appreciate you being so forthcoming in putting together your experience to genuinely help candidates who may be looking to apply to ISB in the coming years or months. So thanks again, Sagar, for taking our time, for presenting so much that you have put together through your own experience. And congrats for the admit again. Best of luck for the time that you will have at ISB. I hope that you have an awesome time, not just during, but post ISB. Enjoy the experience as well as the alumni network that you will gain from there.
No, thank you so much, Prashant. I should thank you because I'm the one, who's getting to ISB because of you. So thanks to you, and kudos to ISBmantra. Not only you, but the effort that you put in, the effort that the likes of Khushbu, Dr. Naveen Das, Vikram, all of these people, and there's a huge team, right, which works onto the application that one person puts together. We don't realize because probably I'm just talking to you throughout the admission process, but there's this big team of people who are actually participating and helping you out. So thanks a lot, and thanks to everyone at ISBmantra for this.
Indeed, thank you so much for appreciating our effort, and have a great time at ISB.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.